Well, I guess I'll try and make things a little quicker with just the few of us, and since we're so late starting, but I'll just go ahead and move on. I guess I'll just tell you a little bit about myself and why we're kind of doing this presentation. I just graduated with my bachelor's degree in dietetics and did an undergraduate research project in farmers markets and SNAP use, and just how we can use SNAP as a form of nutrition education at the farmers markets. I don't know how much you're familiar with this topic or anything like that, but I'll just tell you a little bit about what got me interested in the topic. First of all, I do have a degree in nutrition, so that was already an interest, but last summer I worked for AmeriCorps, which is a volunteer organization, and was able to work for the farmers market and we have someone else, yay!
Yeah, we do. It's Teresa.
Hi. All right, well, we just got started. We were having some technical difficulties, so you're not even behind at all.
Yes, we were having technical difficulties.
We were too, so that's not an issue. All right, well, I guess I'll just introduce myself again. My name's Amanda Spackman, and I just graduated with my bachelor's in dietetics, and we're talking today about SNAP, or food stamp use at farmers markets, and using that as a way to kind of increase nutrition education and food security for low-income individuals. So right now I'm just doing a little bit of introduction before we get started about what got me into this topic. I did an undergraduate research project based on the farmers market and SNAP use there, and this is kind of a culmination of that project. I last summer was an AmeriCorps volunteer and really gained a passion for local food and eating, and feel like it makes a really big difference in nutrition education. One thing that really impacted me was putting a relationship of food to a farmer, rather than just having a package of food that you don't really know a whole lot about. Through my experience, I was able to meet one particular farmer at the market who, as I spoke with him each week, was so excited to tell me about his produce and what I could do with it, and it impacted the way I ate, and I could see this impacting others in the future as they gain those relationships and put a face with the food they're eating rather than just a package. So with that, I guess we can go ahead and get started. So we're just going to start with a little bit of history about farmers markets. There's about 7,000 farmers markets currently, and that number is continually rising. It's a really kind of a trendy thing right now, which is great for educators in the community that they are becoming so popular. And a lot of the reason for that is because people are more interested in where their food is coming from, and it's a lot easier to have that close relationship with food when your food is local. So the number of farmers markets in the United States has quadrupled since 1994, so that's a huge increase. And reasons for advocating local eating and purchasing food from farmers markets, oh yeah, I can see both of you now, thanks, is that we're supporting the local economy and giving local farmers an avenue to sell their produce. Another thing that is really interesting about local eating is that it's often organic, and while it's not certified organic, the farmers are using organic methods to grow their produce, and that way it's kind of a win-win situation because it's cheaper for people to purchase because it hasn't gone through all of the, I guess, legal, technical definitions of organic, but they're still getting the benefits from organic produce. It also can be an economic alternative to conventional produce, especially when people are buying foods in season, which is the only way it's possible to buy foods at farmers markets. The food is a lot cheaper when it's in season and just grown. So anyway, I just want to talk a little bit about centralized versus local food. And centralized food system is kind of where we're living today, where food is just transported to us from wherever. There's no really boundaries to what food we can get, but this can be a little bit wasteful, especially where we're having foods transported here that could easily be grown here, which is what farmers markets are doing, is providing us with food that is grown close to home. Some of the environmental effects of the centralized food system is that your food is traveling miles and miles from the farm it's grown to your plate. The food travels an average of 1,500 miles before it reaches your plate, which is causing CO2 emissions and all of the costs associated with shipping. The food that is grown locally and sold at farmers markets, at least half of it travels 10 miles or less to the farmers market. So it's a lot closer to home, which means it's picked riper, it's picked fresher, and also is not having those detrimental environmental effects. So just a few more benefits of local food. I'm big into this, so just want to sell you on it. So because the food is picked ripe and not ripened over the course of its travel, the taste is greatly enhanced. And I think if any of you have experienced that, a strawberry from your garden is much more tasty than a strawberry from the grocery store, at least in my opinion. And that's because it's had time to ripen on the vine. And another thing is that you get a lot more variety when you're purchasing foods locally, because farmers have the flexibility that they can kind of grow what they want rather than what's in demand, but also they don't have to grow the varieties that are going to be able to ship over time. So I've noticed that strawberries and berries at the market are usually a little bit softer, not quite as firm, but the taste is juicier and more enhanced. And because the food tastes better, that's where the health benefits come in. There hasn't been a lot of proof that local or organic food is necessarily healthier than similar products that are produced conventionally. However, the increased taste will make it so that people will be more likely to eat it. And nutrition can't happen until it's eaten. So by increasing the taste, then we can increase the health of individuals by them eating more fruits and vegetables, which we know has been associated with numerous health benefits. Sustainability is another important thing, and that kind of goes along with what we talked about with food miles and those kinds of things. And also the local farmers are doing a lot more to keep their farms environmentally sound. Cost we also talked about a little bit, and this is a little bit of a controversial topic, whether or not the cost is more or less. Rich Pirogue is an expert in sustainable agriculture and has found that he did a study in Iowa. He's done a lot of studies that we'll actually reference a few of them today, but this particular study found that he went to supermarkets and health food stores and farmers markets all in the state of Iowa and compared prices, and found that while some prices were a little bit higher at the farmers markets, others were lower, and overall the cost was about the same for eating locally. And if you think about the increased value that is associated with eating locally, you could assume that cost shouldn't be an issue, and you are getting a lot of these other benefits related to that. Another study done by Rich Pirogue in Iowa had to do with supporting the local economy with local eating, and he analyzed what would happen if Iowans ate 5 servings of fruits and vegetables a day that were locally sourced for only 3 months of the year. So the rest of the year their produce would have been provided conventionally. He found that this would add about 4,000 jobs to the Iowa economy with the marketing and growing of this food, and about $302.4 million to their economy, which is substantial. And if we're each doing that in our own communities, that can be a real benefit to the communities. As we know, however, food security is a big issue in the United States. Food security is just the idea that people have enough food to get by and to not feel hungry. And 15% of households in the United States were food insecure in 2011, which is a record-breaking number. And 5.7% of these individuals experienced very low food security at some point of the year, which means that at least one person in the family was sacrificing nutritionally for their family. So although the cost of eating locally may not be more than the cost of eating conventionally, most of these people who are food insecure luckily are receiving federal assistance from federal funded programs to increase their food security. But if the farmers markets and local food avenues aren't able to accept and I just lost my train of thought. If they're not able to provide local food to them with their food stamps and SNAP benefits, then it's not going to be an option for them to get these benefits like it is for the higher income populations. So we kind of talked a little bit about cost, and another way that farmers markets could help increase food security if they work with these SNAP programs is there are many areas in our country that are known as food deserts where they don't have access to fresh foods or supermarkets, even though, and this is really common in big cities. So even though there's convenience food stores on every corner, they aren't able to get the fresh fruits and vegetables that they need for a healthy diet. But in a lot of these areas, there are farmers markets, and as I mentioned earlier, farmers markets are on the rise. So if farmers markets do accept food stamps and SNAP benefits, they are able to better assist these individuals. One other thing that's really interesting is the USDA is actually really wanting to increase SNAP use at farmers markets, and they have a new grant that any county that does not currently accept SNAP at their farmers markets can apply for funding to cover the costs associated with accepting SNAP, and that can just be Googled, new USDA SNAP funding. But I would encourage, if SNAP isn't accepted in your county, to look into that form of funding and be advocates for this at your local farmers markets, because it can make a big difference. So currently, there are over 3,000 markets that do participate in SNAP, which is wonderful. And in 2011, SNAP sales exceeded $11 million, which is also excellent. However, comparing this to the amount of money that is redeemed in SNAP in other avenues makes it seem a little bit less significant. And I'm not advocating that people don't use supermarkets at all by any means. I think that's definitely necessary to good nutrition, but it would be great to see the number of SNAP sales at farmers markets increase as a supplement to what they purchase at the supermarkets. So I guess the tricky part of all of this is once your market decides, yes, we believe in this cause and we do want to help individuals with SNAP benefits, how does a market go about doing something like this? And it can get a little bit complex, to be honest. There's a lot of rules and things to make sure that everything's going accordingly and following the rules that SNAP has set forth. So currently, there's two main systems that are used at markets. The one is called a centralized point of sale. And what this means is that markets have one terminal or one ATM machine where individuals receiving SNAP come and swipe their cards, and then they receive what's called scrip, which is just a form of currency used only at the farmers market, and they choose an amount that they want to spend with their benefits, purchase the script and are then able to use that to spend throughout the market. And in this way, the market managers are in charge of the whole SNAP system for every one of their vendors, and they keep diligent records and reimburse their vendors each week for their SNAP sales. And the new USDA funding, which I mentioned, is only available for this system. Each market can only receive one ATM terminal with that new funding. They can't receive multiple, which brings me to the second way that some markets do it, which is an individual point of sale system. And in this way, each farmer would have their own device and run the EBT cards with SNAP benefits on their own. And there's a lot of benefits to an individual point of sale system in that it's a lot more confidential for those people receiving benefits. It's also the farmer deals with all of his own financial situation, so there's not as much money traveling around. It's a lot more direct to the farmer. However, this is a much more expensive way to implement SNAP, so normally it is a centralized point of sale because there just isn't the funding for each farmer to have their own point of sale terminal. It has, however, shown in studies that it is more effective in increasing both SNAP sales and overall sales to the market for the farmers to each have their own point of sale terminals. So the first thing that a market needs to do, and as extension agents, if you work with the market at all, it'd be great to just bring up the idea to markets to see if they've considered it. But the most important thing is, are the vendors willing to embark on this task in a way? And the most important thing for advocates of this is to point out that this has been shown to increase sales. So it's a win-win situation. It's not something that we're doing just to help the individuals receiving SNAP, but it will benefit the farmer as well. But it is an undertaking, to say the least, to implement these changes to a market. Another thing that's important for the market, especially when using the centralized point of sale that I talked about, is to assess resources. How is the market going to be able to control this new form of financial form? Who's going to keep records? It's not suggested that the market manager does this alone because it is a big undertaking and they have so many other responsibilities that it's suggested to hire a SNAP coordinator or somebody that this is their sole responsibility, is to take care of this SNAP purchases and reimbursements and all of those things. Another really important thing to think about is funds. How are the startup costs going to be covered? And unfortunately, it is fairly expensive to implement this program. Most people, when they choose to start offering SNAP, also choose to offer credit debit transactions using the same terminal, and this is just to offer an additional service for those people who don't carry cash often. They can help with startup costs and they can help to stimulate further sales by offering debit and credit transactions. However, that adds more cost to the terminal because credit card companies charge for each time a card is run. There's charges for the machine. I think I read that it's $700 to $850 just to get the machine and get started, and there's monthly fees associated after that. And overall, it has been found that these startup costs eventually pay for themselves, but the market does need some way to fund them. There are grants and sponsorships available, and in the research I read, they just suggested word of mouth and talking to other markets who've implemented the similar things and seeing how they funded it. And I mentioned the new USDA grant, and that's going to be distributed through each state depending on how many markets they have that don't offer SNAP. So currently would be a great time for this to start up because there is funding available. Another important question to ask when implementing SNAP is, how is this going to be marketed? how are you going to let people know that this is available for them to use? Because without proper marketing, then your costs aren't going to pay for themselves and you won't get the response that you're looking for. So the interesting thing about marketing SNAP is that simple is better. One study in a Michigan market found they started out with a huge SNAP campaign where they were spending a lot of money advertising on buses and lots of places throughout the community to let people know that they accepted SNAP, and found that they weren't getting quite the response that they wanted. So what they did instead was marketed within the farmers market. Each farmer that accepted SNAP put up a small sign that said SNAP tokens accepted here, in both English and Spanish, and it's important to take a look at your demographic and make sure that your advertising is targeted that way. But they found that this simple marketing actually increased sales a lot more. Just they were advertising to those people that were already shopping at the market, already interested in local food, and probably a great thing for them to realize, oh, and I can't afford this, I can use my SNAP benefits here. So after you've assessed your market's ability to implement SNAP, it's necessary to become eligible to do so. And in order to do this, an FNS license must be obtained, and your market must qualify. And the qualifications are all listed on the website. They can see if they qualify, and you create a USDA account and enter your name, address, social security number, expected sales from SNAP at your market, and you're able to get that FNS license to accept SNAP benefits. An interesting thing, if you are a centralized point of sale, then only one FNS license is needed for the whole market. Each farmer does not need their own license, which is a lot of the reason why that's a more popular system, because the farmers don't have as much to do to change in order to be able to accept it, and it's more in charge of the market itself. When doing individual point of sale systems, each farmer would have to go through this process of becoming eligible. So after this is all set up, then you have to obtain the equipment to be able to process these transactions. And there's several ways of doing that. You can receive a free EBT terminal, but this would process only EBT transactions, not credit and debit transactions. So for a lot of markets, they're not interested in this while it's free, because they're not able to offer that extra service to their customers of offering credit and debit transactions. Another issue with this is that it's a wired terminal, which means that it has to be hooked up electrically in some way, and that's usually not feasible in an outdoor farmer's market. So the wireless POS terminal is a lot more common, and these are available through the Department of Workforce Services, but they are more costly. A lot of people are really interested in offering SNAP through their smartphones or tablets. However, this hasn't been approved yet by Food and Nutrition Services because you have to enter your PIN number, and this hasn't been shown to be secure through that avenue yet. But that is a really interesting avenue as they develop new programs. If they can come up with a secure way, it would really make a difference in offering SNAP at markets. Another important thing is that individuals are trained, especially the farmers are trained for SNAP success. As I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of rules, and SNAP fraud is a huge issue, and it's important that the farmers and market is trained appropriately so that they're keeping in line with all of the guidelines that are set for using SNAP. It's a good idea to have a list of items that farmers can and cannot accept. Not all food purchases qualify as SNAP purchases, so it's important that they understand and are keeping with those guidelines. Another important thing is just that they understand what the script is and how that works, especially if you're offering both credit and debit and SNAP transactions. It's important that they understand the difference and that they can only accept SNAP tokens for certain items and credit debit for others, and that they have very clear understanding of this. So as I mentioned, I was able to work. I was actually worked at the SNAP booth at the Cache Valley market, so I was able to see how that all runs for their market. And as any system, there were pros and cons to the way that their system ran. So as I mentioned, it's not a great idea for the market manager to be over all SNAP transactions. So at the Cache Valley Gardeners Market, they have a whole committee that's in charge of the market, and it's overseen by the market treasurer. So she takes care of all of the reimbursements and that paperwork that's so important. But they do have the luxury of being volunteer run on the market days, and that's what I had the opportunity of doing, was to run that SNAP booth on the day of the market. So she was able to deal with other responsibilities on that day, and she took care of the bookkeeping at home when she had time. Cache Valley was a central point of sale system, as I mentioned, and they used script. They had both credit and debit tokens and SNAP tokens that they used to implement this program. And vendors helped to offset the costs associated with using the EBT machine by paying a 3% fee for every SNAP and credit debit sale that they made. So pros to this system, as I mentioned, they only had to receive one license from Food and Nutrition Services. The vendors shared the cost, so it was a little bit more manageable for them to implement the system. And the treasurer ran the program instead of the market manager, which was a plus. And also, because they offered both credit, debit, and SNAP to the public, it was a little bit less ostentatious for SNAP recipients to have to go to the booth to get their tokens, because anybody that was making a purchase with a credit or debit card had to, so nobody had to know that they were a SNAP recipient. Some of the cons at the market is using the central point of sale system made it so there were many vendors that had to be trained and taken care of to be able to run the program. Another issue is that vendors were unhappy sharing the 3% fee, and in this case it would have been better if the market could have gotten a grant of some kind to help cover those costs. Another thing is SNAP participants don't like to have to use tokens because they don't like to feel different than the general population who's using cash to make their purchases, and so in that way they felt a little bit segregated, which is not what we want for SNAP recipients to feel like. Another issue is that reimbursement was not instant for the farmers. They had to wait to receive that check in the mail, which was often an issue to their business. Another great thing is, I know at some markets in the state and at Cache Valley Market, they have the luxury of having Food Sense at the market. Because they accept SNAP benefits, Food Sense is able to educate at the market, because it becomes the right audience that Food Sense is looking for. Food Sense at the Cache Gardeners Market provides food samples, education on how to preserve, grow, take care of the produce that they get, and easy to prepare low-cost recipes. And this is so important, and I think one of the things that makes SNAP at the Cache Gardeners Market really effective is the fact that they do have this additional education for individuals to know what to do with produce. This is important because a lot of times, like I mentioned earlier, the produce is a little bit different at the market than what you might find in the grocery store. There's a lot more variety, and a lot of times people don't know how to use the produce that they're given and may become overwhelmed and not want to find a way to use it. But in this case, they're able to taste a sample, maybe of something they've never tried before, talk to someone and learn how to implement this food item into their diet, and ask them, who's selling this, where can I get it? And the volunteers and educators there are able to send them in the right direction and give them a little bit of leeway into introducing more fresh fruits and vegetables from the market into their diets. So some improvements that could be looked at many markets for the future is how could we offset the cost of this individual point of sale system and allow each farmer to have their own terminal. It's a better system for everybody involved, but it is a huge cost. So if there could be ways to offset this cost, it could be a major improvement to the program in the future. Another thing that hasn't been done in Utah but has been done in other states are incentive programs to encourage individuals receiving SNAP to purchase their food at the farmers market. And how they work is, there's just a few examples here on the page called Double Up Food Bucks and Wholesome Wave. And what they do is they offer twice as much money if they use their food stamps at the farmers market. So they are able to get $4 of produce for the cost of $2. And this is not something that would be done long term, but it could be done to incentivize people to start spending their food dollars at the market and get comfortable using that produce and find a love for local eating and local food. And so these programs are, again, costly, so it's a lot of the reason why they haven't been implemented here, but they can make a huge difference if funding is found to be available or individuals write grant proposals to try and get that funding. So that's pretty much the extent of SNAP at gardeners markets, and there's a lot of nitty-gritty details, but just to reiterate what I've said, this is an effective avenue for increasing fruit and vegetable consumption in individuals who may not always have that luxury, especially as SNAP works with local gardeners markets to provide this luxury to consumers. So as we learn these details and how to best implement these changes, we can learn how to really make an impact on the low-income population and increase SNAP acceptance across the state and country. And that's about it, unless we have any questions.
So this is Margie.
She's talking, but I can't hear her.
Can you hear me now?
Is your microphone on? What's her name? Margie?
Yes, it's on.
We can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Okay, now try it.
Oh, there we go.
Can you hear it?
Yep, we can hear you.
So I'm just wondering, I'm in a small county. Don't really have organized farmers markets yet here at all. So this is something that I would look forward to, kind of going around and trying to encourage participation. And when that happens, then I'm also would be terrifically encouraged or excited to see about how we could incorporate SNAP into our farmers market. But at this point in time, we don't really have one here in our county organized.
Right, and that would certainly be the first step.
Yeah, so I basically tuned in out of curiosity and always looking for things to bring to Juab County. So we actually have, Jeff has applied for a grant, an extension grant, and received a grant to develop this year some raised bed community gardens. So I think this could work hand in hand with the increased interest that's coming through the county right now. So maybe in the near future we'll be able to participate. So anyway, I appreciate your comments. It was very interesting. Thank you so much.
I've got a question.
Yeah.
This is Teresa in Weber County. We have 2 farmers markets, both of which accept the EBT and the SNAP Ed money. and they are, well, they've tried it two different ways. Right now it's mostly the centralized checkout. I know that they're looking to individual vendors, but I don't think that's going to happen really quickly. But the question that I have is, how, in implementing food sense at the farmers market, did Cache County go about doing that? We were at the smaller of the two farmers markets, and I've been told that this smaller farmers market is not going to be a go because the bigger one in downtown Ogden, anyway, it's kind of taken over. But we haven't been able to get into the farmers market, and so I wanted to know who to contact through the big farmers market. I mean, who did Cache County work with? The SNAP Ed people, the food sense people, and secondly, how did the food sense people afford to give samples of whatever food they were giving samples for?
I might have to turn you to Debbie on that question.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
We cheated a little bit in Cache County. It was easy to get in because a professor in the nutrition department at USU was good friends with the guy who was running the farmers market. He kind of got her in. She pulled food sense in. So it worked that way. And then we were able to use students to help run the whole thing. And we didn't have to pay any EAs because students were volunteering. And the state office helped support a little bit of the food. This year, we've actually gotten a grant to run the program a little bit differently in Cache County so that we can pilot it, knowing how to extend it to the other counties, because we knew that it was an unfair advantage in Cache County with students and the state helping out. So we're working on that this year. How do we make it work so that it works in any county?
That's the thing. You guys do have the advantage,
Yeah.
and we
Yeah.
don't.
And I've
So-
been trying to tell them for the last 2 years, this isn't feasible. It's working here, but it's not working anywhere else in the state because we have advantages in Cache County that no one else has, and we've got to learn how to make it work in every county.